A couple of months ago, my friend Sharky and I attempted to 100% Stardew Valley in under 2 years, but we fell just short of that goal. We can officially lock in our date of completion as the 26th of spring, year 3. This is part 1 of a 2-part series where it is my aim to once again try and 100% Stardew Valley in under 2 years, and to achieve what we could not achieve before. But this time, I'm doing it alone. But it's all gotta start somewhere, and that somewhere for us is on day 1 in the valley. Right off the bat, I got a chest down and my parsnips planted, and I was taking off into the valley all before 9 AM. As soon as I got into town, I was looking through the trash, talking to villagers, and heading down to the beach. I was hoping to come across an artifact, but all I got instead was some boring old clay. Back up at Pierre's, I purchased one of every spring seed. I'll be needing these for the shipping collection later on. You'll be surprised to know that crops won't be my main source of income this season, but that's for me to know and for you to find out. Anywho, I kept on chatting to villagers and I went for a forage down in the Cindersap forest. But to my dismay, the forest was not providing for me today. I got one measly spring onion. So instead I returned home where I chopped down as many weeds as I could. These gave me 7 mixed seeds, which I planted down well after the sun had set, and I passed out breaking rocks. But I did get level 1 foraging. Before we go any further with the video, I just want to take a minute to thank and tell you about the sponsor of today's video, Nikki. I'm aware and the developers are aware of some of the criticism circling around the game at the moment, which is why I have teamed up with Nikki to bring you up to speed on what they have been cooking in the background for us all to look forward to. Infold Games has been working on more stable builds and thoughtful updates that put improving the player's experience first, and it starts with the 1.10 Rainfall and Blossoms update. A big part of this new witchy update is the introduction of a new main quest line, the Sovereign of Sexy Challenge. It follows Nikki as she steps into the role of a detective for the first time, highlighting Infold's outfit changing feature and their dedication to writing female-led storylines. The update is also dropping with a bunch of awesome content, brand new events throughout the peaceful world of Nikki. The brand new dye system allows you to craft and show off one-of-a-kind outfits, such as the new limited 5-star residence outfit, as well as the home feature, which gives you 360-degree free construction freedom to build and shape a home that is unique to your style and taste. And thanks to the Unreal Engine 5, you can guarantee that your home will be filled with light and shadow. I will note, and thank you to Infold Games for allowing me to include this, that Nikki is a gacha game, so it does involve your real life money when playing, so do keep that in mind and use your own discretion. You can download the game using the links in the description and pinned comment down below to play right now. And thank you to Nikki for sponsoring this video, and without further ado, let's get right back into the action. Rolling swiftly along to day 2, I made sure to water all of the crops I'd planted down yesterday. You'll be interested to know that I have been talking to so many villagers because of the help wanted quests. Completing 3 of these quests will get us a prize ticket, which can get us some goodies early on. Although my first quest was to get an earth crystal for Alex, which actually isn't possible at this point in time, so we're off to a great start. After waddling down to the beach, I got my hands on Willie's old fishing rod. Before I casted it into the sea, I dug up some carrot seeds on the beach. You know, it's not quite an artifact, but it's still very important nonetheless. I took my new rod to the rock close by and I fished there. While there's not much going on, I just wanted to say that if you do like this content and you want to see more, then make sure to leave a like on the video, and hey, maybe even subscribe to the channel. I would appreciate that very much. When I got my first fishing level, I sold off my fish to Willie to make some room for more fish, of course. I repeated the same process over again in the mid-afternoon, all before hightailing it to Pierre's to sell off some forage I had picked up. I continued north to the mountain lake to do even more fishing. Some bubbles were already waiting there for me when I got there, and when they disappeared a little while while later, I decided to hang out with Sebastian for the rest of the night. When I made it back home in the dead of night, I planted down my carrot seeds I'd picked up earlier, and I quickly made it to bed before 2 AM. I will note that all of my fishing today got me 3 fishing levels. As it usually does, the rain was coming down on day 3. I planned on utilizing the fact big time for another day of fishing. Before I did, however, I picked up a help wanted quest to get Willie a carp, and I fished away on the pier waiting for Willie's to open. 9 o'clock rolled around pretty quickly, and all of the money I had earned fishing so far went into purchasing the fiberglass rod and lots of bait. I then circled around to the museum. Because I had fished up some aquamarine from a fishing chest earlier, that meant that I could add an extra 250 gold to my wallet for donating my first mineral. Hey, every little bit helps when you're this early on. When I got to the river, I chowed down on some sea jelly. This gives me an extra fishing level, and when you're trying to catch catfish, any amount of extra help I could get, I was going to take, no questions asked. I spent the rest of the day fishing in the river for catfish. I got lucky with some bubbles appearing later on as well. Catfish money is one of the best ways to get a good start going. I stopped fishing in the river just after 7 that night. I quickly popped down to the cindersap forest afterwards to get some forage, but I came away with just a single dandelion. And look, I'm totally not salty about it. Then I wandered all the way up to the other side of the valley to catch that carp I needed to give Willie, and I passed out breaking rocks on the farm again. But I did get to level 5 fishing. Woohoo! I had to scare away a crow on day 4. Luckily the pesky thing only had eyes for a parsnip and not any of my other spring seeds. This morning I made my way through town, picking up some forage and making my way down to the beach. I gave Willie the carp he was after, and that was help wanted quest number 1 ticked off. I should also note that I dug up my first artifact today. I got some glass shards. I don't really know what constitutes glass shards to be an artifact, but hey, we had it nonetheless. I then sold off all of my fish, including the 9 catfish I caught yesterday, to Willie when he opened up shop. This netted me a solid 4.5 grand. Obviously, I waited until today to sell it all now that I had the Fisher perk. On the way to the mountain lake, I donated the glass shards to the museum, and I noticed a new help wanted quest was already posted on the board. Turns out Willie also wants a daffodil, which made for a quick and easy quest. Back at the general store, I used some profits to purchase the first backpack upgrade. And back on the farm, I smacked a few rocks to finally get me level 1 mining. I think it will be worthwhile to go into the mines tomorrow with a mining level already up my sleeve. As the day rolled into the afternoon, it was back to fishing at the mountain lake. I fished in bubbles, I fished in more bubbles, and I fished in even more bubbles. It was bubbles galore. You'd almost think this was a transition scene in SpongeBob. There were that many bubbles. I fished until quite late that night, but I did have enough time to pass by the saloon on the way home to get some salads from Gus. And yeah, I passed out breaking rocks again. But as you can see, we did get level 1 mining and level 6 fishing. The morning of day 5 started with adopting my cat. I got myself a white cat and I called her Betty, just like our real life cat Betty. Although in-game Betty is way less of a menace than real life Betty is. When I was done adopting, I had some parsnips and carrots to pick in my very small field of crops. I kept 3 parsnips which I popped into a separate chest. This is the start of my cooking ingredients chest. That's right folks, it's only day 5 and I'm already prepping to cook every recipe. Gosh, I'm so proud of myself. I also made some spring seeds with the forage I'd gathered. Those I planted down to replace the crops I'd picked. I watered them all, quickly circled down to the traveling cart who was selling nothing of interest, and then it was back across the valley to the mines, where I started descending down into the deep, dark, cavernous depths. With the help of those salads and some good old-fashioned Irish luck, we cracked 20 levels in the first day in the mines, which I genuinely don't think I've actually ever done before. Plus, I got level 1 farming, level 1 combat, and level 2 mining. The productive train kept on chugging along to day 6. After watering my crops this morning, I chopped down trees on the farm until I had 300 pieces of wood. I also crafted my first furnace and I started smelting copper bars. By the time I got into town, it was already the afternoon. I picked up a help wanted quest to get Haley some seaweed. I handed over a haul of donations to Gunther at the museum with the items I'd gathered from yesterday's mine excursion. That got me some free cauliflower seeds. I then opened some geodes at the blacksmith, which got me even more donations, and I was doing this all while smelting copper into bars. And I put those bars towards a pickaxe upgrade. I should also note that I got the community center cutscene, but I skipped it because we don't care about that. Time is money, and we need ungodly amounts of money. I found myself on the beach afterwards. The 300 wood I had gathered went towards fixing the bridge to the tide pools. I was hoping for a sea urchin along with the coral I gathered, but alas there was none here. Back on the farm, I planted those cauliflower seeds and I decided to wrap up the day fishing at the mountain lake again. There's not too much else to note for the day, except that I fished up a skeletal tail and that I got level 2 foraging. My crop field had provided me with a couple of potatoes, a parsnip, one bit of kale, and a tulip the next day. Now it may not seem like much, but like I said, every little bit helps. I even popped my 2 potatoes into the cooking ingredients chest. Gosh, I'm just such a productive king. I picked up a complete breakfast from the traveling cart this morning. I used this as Lewis's birthday gift, which honestly didn't give me as many friendship points as I would have liked. And don't tell me if a dandelion would have given me the same amount because I spent 1,750 gold on that cooked meal, which was way too much. Anyway, there was no coral on the tide pools today either, so I fished away the day by the rock for those juicy fishing levels. That was interrupted by the catching of a seaweed, which I gave to Haley, which got me a prize ticket, which I used to get 12 carrot seeds. And I picked up another help wanted quest to catch 4 sardines, which I did, and then I told Willie about it, and that was another help wanted quest done. And I donated a skeletal tail, then I ended up at the mountain lake fishing. This is where the rest of my day was spent. And what did I have to show for my efforts today? I had more carrots planted down that night, and level 7 fishing of course. By day 8, my blue jazz flower had grown, but that was about it, so I had to water the rest. Today was yet another day without a sea urchin, much to my dismay, and you will see why I want one very soon. But that did kill enough time for me to pop right into Clint's to grab my copper pickaxe. Which can only mean one thing, it was time to hit the mines for another crusade through the caverns. Despite what I can only describe as a heroic attempt to get as far down as I could, I fell just short of level 45. However, that was another 20 levels gained, and that is nothing to laugh at, my friends. I also got level 2 combat and level 3 mining. I began the following day tree chopping. I desperately needed another chest for storage, as the other one was close to bursting at the seams. I made some extra furnaces this morning and smelted more copper into bars before trotting off into town. The help wanted quest for today was to get Penny a potato, and I popped by Pierre's to purchase some more seeds of produce. Sorry, I just gotta wipe away all the spit I just sprayed from saying so many P words. I said hi to Shane and then bonked him over the head for being a douche before handing over my axe for a copper upgrade. Thank the good heavens there was a sea urchin down in the tide pools today. I ran back to the farm to put it away for now to keep it safe, and I planted down all of the seeds I purchased this morning. When they were all watered, I quickly popped back out to give Penny her potato, and I ran back to gather 3 iron bars that I'd been smelting. I used them along with some coral and the 1 sea urchin to craft a bait maker. Now the bait maker is going to be step 1 of our spring money making scheme. With the bait maker, I can start catching specific fish over and over again, and the type of fish that we want to be catching right now is the largemouth bass. But yeah, I'll be honest with you all, I didn't quite catch one tonight. However, I did get my first power book. It doesn't quite make up for it, but you know, that's okay. I will say that day 10 is a much better example of this theory in action. After the crops were watered and the carrots were picked, and after Vincent got his gold quality birthday daffodil, it was a full day of catching largemouth bass, thanks to my bait maker. Along with obtaining level 8 fishing, I caught a total of 21 largemouth bass before they stopped spawning at 7 PM later that night. Not too shabby, not too shabby indeed. Now, with some time left over after the sun had set, I dumped all I wanted to sell into the shipping bin, I smelted some ore in my furnaces, and then I just went to bed. Clearly someone wasn't in the mood to pass out breaking rocks again. Demetrius was at my doorstep the next morning. He was here with the choice of either fruit bats or mushrooms for the farm cave, and I decided to go with mushrooms this time around. Because it comes with the dehydrator, I'll be able to make a little extra cash on the side. I'm out here hustling on the side hustle, that's how you know I mean business. Over in town this morning, I dropped off a few more donations to the museum. Then I picked up my copper axe from the blacksmith right afterwards. I treated myself to the iridium rod today. I think I deserve it after all the hard work I've put in so far. I also grabbed some bobbers for later use. And back on the farm, I made myself a cookout kit. This is the start of a plan to catch the legend in the next few days. And that plan started with cooking up a dish of the sea. In order to do that, I needed the hash brown recipe from Gus, and I needed to fish up 2 sardines, which I managed to do quite quickly. This allowed me to cook the dish of the sea, which will give me an extra 3 fishing levels. All I need now is a rainy day. But until then, I used my new copper axe to chop down tree stumps around the farm. This got me a good amount of hardwood and a lot of good foraging XP. And I kept at it with the tree chopping until I went to bed later that night, and I got myself level 4 foraging. It was on day 12 that the heavens had opened up again, making it the perfect day to catch us the legend. After picking my spring seeds that had grown, I raced up to the mountain lake as quickly as I could. I wanted as much time as I could get with the legend because sometimes you just never know. That fish can be a right bastard. And in fact, I can report that the legend did put up quite the fight when I hooked it. But he was no match for my iridium rod, trap bobber, and raw fishing skill. Now that I had the legend, you may assume that I'd just be selling it off. But no, my friends, you would be sorely mistaken. My plan is to drop this bad boy into a fish pond in the coming days. Legend Fish Row gives me some pretty amazing early game money, and if I can get it into preserve jars, then that is even better. Hence why I spent the rest of the day fishing in the ocean. I will need seaweed in order to buy a fish pond. Plus, I needed to catch an eel for the fishing collection. And hey, I won't complain about the extra money. I picked a couple of cauliflower the following morning. I had to add one to the cooking ingredients chest, and the other I sold off for the shipping collection. As you can see, I have also planted down rice shoots. I just totally forgot to mention that, but hey, there they are. I decided to chop down trees while I waited for the egg festival to begin. I might as well make use of the energy that I won't be using today. I did need to visit the egg festival for the strawberry seeds, first and foremost for the shipping, but they also make for some pretty great gifts later on. I also got to smash the egg hunt competition this year with a total of 13 eggs. I gave Abigail something to talk about with her therapist this week. To top it all off, I got my strawberries planted and I got level 5 foraging, so I chose the Gatherer perk. As I awoke on day 14, a pesky crow reminded me that I'd been so laser focused that I had totally forgotten to craft a scarecrow. Not to worry though, I remedied that one pretty quickly. I paid a visit to the travelling cart after the crops were watered to find Haley a birthday gift. I did remember that she loves a sunflower, so when I saw the poppy there, I thought, that'll do. So while I waited for her to leave her room, I foraged around the beach and sold it to Willie. In return, I got a dressed spinner bobber. I also accepted a help wanted quest from Robin to get her 25 wood. Now, things go a little bit downhill from here. First of all, Haley hated her birthday gift so much that I actually contemplated restarting the day. I soldiered on nonetheless though. Then I went to hand Robin her 25 wood, only to realize that she wanted me to gather it first. Unbelievable. Alas, I gathered the wood and I got myself another prize ticket. I held out on using it for now because I wanted to use as much time as I could catching more largemouth bass with my bait maker. By 6 PM that night, I had caught another 22 largemouth bass. On the way to Lewis's, I detoured to get the secret prize ticket behind Marcello's. Then I used both tickets to get a peach tree sapling and some mixed seeds. I stopped by the river to catch myself a bream before heading home. I'll need that for a cooking ingredient, along with a few other items that I added when I got back to the farm. I sold off my fish and one of each spring forage for the shipping collection. I chopped down a few more trees, and then it was off to bed. Now, since I had collected 2 prize tickets from the Help Wanted quests, that triggered the Mr. Key Mystery Boxes cutscene. And I was delighted to know that I could now start collecting mystery boxes. I harvested some kale and potatoes this morning. I put those straight into the cooking ingredients chest. I took the long way to Robin's today so I could pick up a Help Wanted quest to slay some slimes in the mines. It's a bad day to be one of those little suckers, I'll say that much. Up at Robin's, I finally commissioned that fish pond I needed. Then it was back to the mines today for another field trip into the unknown. Having gained another 15 levels today, I left with just enough time to swing by the community centre to read the scroll. It was written in Doctor's handwriting, so I couldn't quite understand it, and I got back to the farm just in time for bed. Today's expedition got me level 3 combat and level 4 mining. Along with a couple of blue jazz flowers, my rice was ready to be harvested today. That certainly ticked off a couple of crops for the shipping collection, and I sold it off alongside some minerals I didn't need just yet for a bit of extra cash. Down in the Cindersap forest, I foraged for salmon berries, and I paid my first visit to the wizard. I quickly skipped past the cutscene, but I'm sure we all know what cutscene it was. I was over in town afterwards talking to Lewis, which completed the Slime Help Wanted quest. And up at the community centre, I used some spring forage to finish a crafts room bundle. In return, you get 30 spring seeds, so really it was a no-brainer. I circled around to Clint's afterwards to open some geodes. I got quite a few donations from it too, which was great to see. The spring seeds I planted down when I got back to the farm that afternoon. Then I was back fishing in the river shortly afterwards. Demetrius wanted me to catch 3 smallmouth bass for a Help Wanted quest, so I made quick work of that. And the remainder of the day was spent fishing up at the mountain lake, grinding away for those fishing levels. The only thing to note was that I fished up a strange doll artifact. So I guess we might as well just move right along to day 17. With the fish pond now done, I made no hesitation chucking the legend in there. All of the hard mahi was taken care of, now we just have to wait to receive the treats. I got my first green bean today too. I chucked that in the cooking chest. I hit up Willie's and the blacksmith before fishing this morning, Willie's to get another dressed spinner bobber, then Clint's for a steel pickaxe upgrade. We were back to fishing for largemouth bass today, and you may be wondering why largemouth bass, and it's simply because it gets us the most amount of gold per fish caught. The exception being catfish, but we needed to rain a bit more for that, I'm afraid. So largemouth bass it is. When it hit 7 PM, I continued to fish because I could see that I was inching ever so closer to level 10 fishing. But time restraints meant I fell just short of that achievement. Every bit of gold is precious at this point in the run, and I didn't want to lose any of it passing out, so it was to bed I went at a very sensible 1:20 AM. After a solid 4 hours and 40 minutes of sleep, I was feeling fresh as a daisy this morning. I harvested my cauliflower and watered my plants. I then waited ever so impatiently to give Pam her birthday present shortly after I gave her one of my parsnips. I got myself another dressed spinner from Willie, and I passed by the Help Wanted board on the way back home. This one was pretty easy, I just had to get Haley a daffodil, which made for another easy prize ticket. This got me a few mystery boxes from the prize machine. It was after this that I went back to fishing up largemouth bass. It may be boring, but it's gonna be well worth the money. Not only did I get level 3 farming today, but I did, of course, get level 10 fishing. Right off the bat on day 19, I dumped all the fish I had caught over the last couple of days into the shipping bin. If it wasn't obvious, I was just waiting to get level 10 fishing for the angler perk. Now I'll get even more money from them with no extra effort. That's a win-win in my book. After watering my crops this morning, I popped by the travelling cart. She'd brought with her nothing that I wanted nor needed, so it was off to town for me. Robin had a Help Wanted quest for me to complete. She needed 20 pieces of stone. Then it was right to Clint's to get my steel pickaxe back and to hand over my watering can for a copper upgrade. And last but not least was the museum, to hand over a few artifacts that I had fished up over the last couple of days. It was hard to resist the call of the mines now that I had my steel pickaxe back, so that is where I spent the rest of the day. And hey, look at that! I got level 5 mining, and level 4 combat. I began day 20 patiently waiting outside of Robin's, filling my boots with rainwater. All I had to do was talk to her to complete the help wanted quest I had picked up yesterday. Was it worth the wait? Let's just say it was. I then made my way down to Pierre's and picked up the final backpack upgrade with my largemouth bass money. And to make up for my spending, I parked up on the riverbank with my bait maker and caught catfish all day long. I had been waiting very patiently for another rainy day to do exactly this. I should also mention that I did not forget Shane's birthday. I got him a beer on the house that evening. I managed to haul up 30 catfish by the time I finished that night, netting me a solid 15,000 gold, which I can say with certainty definitely made up for the backpack upgrade. It was on day 21 that I got to collect my first batch of legend fish roe. There were only 2, but combined they would sell for 5,000 gold, which when you think of it is about a third of what I made yesterday, and I did bugger all for it. That wasn't all, however. I picked a couple of cauliflower and my first round of strawberries this morning, and I can tick strawberries off the shipping collection. The traveling cart was back today, although she had nothing for me. So I quickly made my way into town. Here I donated a nautilus fossil that I had fished up yesterday, and I swapped out my copper watering can for a steel axe upgrade at the blacksmith. As for the rest of the day, I thought a good use of my time could be spent down in the mines. After another successful run in the mines yesterday, I felt it was time to open more geodes. I find that the museum is always the trickiest to complete, and I will need it for a star drop, so the more donations I can make now will hopefully mean less stress for future Poxial. But there are no guarantees though, so let's just pray for his sake that it's gonna be okay. In my geode unboxing, I also opened my first mystery boxes, and a highlight of that was a glow ring / magnet ring combo, which was actually very handy. I also got my first rare crow from the museum rewards. That's giving me some PTSD from the video with Sharky, but I digress. I circled around to Pierre's afterwards to purchase some kale seeds. Because I haven't been doing too much farming this season, kale will be a great way to gain some easy farming XP as we head into the summer season. However, for whatever reason, I held on to them and I instead decided to hit up the mines for the day. I farmed for copper for a bit in the higher levels, then I went back to the lower levels to make some more progress. When I hit level 100, I got my hands on my first star drop of the run, which was very nice to have under my belt. I used that copper when I got home to make some more furnaces for the farm, and I called it a night after that. I managed to obtain level 5 combat today and level 6 mining. So here we are on day 23. I had been blessed with another day of rain, and I intended to make the most of it with another day of catfish fishing. Apart from getting some dressed spinner bobbers from Willie and picking up my steel axe from Clint, fishing up catfish is what I did all day long. And I walked away from that day of fishing with 40 catfish. I'll tell you what, that bait maker is insane. You'll be intrigued to know that I actually did not sell off those catfish last night. No, I've got bigger plans for them. But for now, I did have some spring forage to pick, a mushroom cave to clear, and some big logs to chop down with my brand new and improved steel axe. The 24th of spring is host to the flower dance, and you may recall that in the video with Sharky, we not only forgot to go once, but twice, which ultimately was the reason we didn't 100% the game in under 2 years. So you bet your sweet little tushies that I wasn't going to miss out on it this time around. I may not have had a dance partner, but I did have the tub of flowers crafting recipe and the rare crow, and that was all that mattered to me. When the dance was over, I quickly made my way to the mines and spent the last few hours of the day fishing for some cave jelly. I wasn't very hopeful as they are pretty rare, but I had that YouTuber luck behind me tonight and I got a single piece just in the nick of time. Plus, I got level 4 farming. I was right to work on day 25. I picked my strawberries, I collected some legend roe, I made a preserves jar to put the roe in, I got the recipe for and crafted a fish smoker with my jellies, and I settled in for another day of catfish fishing. It's wild to me that I got another rainy day, but I couldn't argue, I didn't have the time anyway. The idea behind the fish smoker is that it will double the sell price of my catfish. So I could have sold my 40 catfish the other day for roughly 18,000 gold, but now, when I smoke it, I'll get roughly 36,000. And that's not even including what I catch today. So with that, it was a day full of catching catfish. I did get level 6 foraging today too, and the catfish I smoked today got me just over 18,000 gold. And I have a lot more to smoke. The next day began over at the travelling cart, but just as quickly as I had got there, I left again with nothing of importance. I found myself in town later on, handing Pierre a gold quality dandelion for his birthday. And for all of you people with high hopes that I would tackle the community center for this challenge, well, I'm sorry to crush those hopes. I am Joja all the way when it comes to this challenge. It's just so much easier to purchase the developments, but hey, maybe one day I'll revisit this challenge and try to do it with the community center. But with my decision made, I headed back to the mines and attempted to reach the bottom before the end of the day. When I hit level 120 and received my skull key, I was too excited and I prematurely warped back home with a warp totem, only to realize that I had left my fish smoker behind in the mine elevator. Hilarious in hindsight, not so hilarious when it happened. But I did get level 7 mining, so there's that I guess. It was right to cleanse the following day to open some geodes. A crusade through the mines naturally means that a geode cracking session was guaranteed the next day. At the same time, I was trying to smoke catfish. I had so many to smoke. That being said, I did get a few more donations handed over, so I was happy with that. I took a little deviation on my way home to break into the secret woods for the first time. I'll be needing a lot of hardwood and foraging XP. And the secret woods will be perfect for both of those things. But truthfully, I spent most of the day clearing out trees and farm debris. I needed an activity that was catfish smoking friendly, and this was the best idea that I could come up with. Day 28 is the final day of spring, and it was at the travelling cart that I realised I had missed Emily's birthday yesterday. So that was just a real fine and dandy way to start the day. I cleared out the secret woods again and made my way over to Jojamart, where I purchased my first community development project, which was the greenhouse on the farm. I then found another catfish smoking friendly activity, which was fishing in the ocean. I really wanted to fish up another sea jelly because one fish smoker is nice, but to have two of them would make my life a little bit easier. And despite the fact that I did not fish one up today, even though I fish one up every other time, it seems a bit stupid if you ask me, and I'm totally not salty about it, I managed to smoke a bunch of catfish. And I have to say, this has been the most productive spring season I think I've ever had. And it's a perfect start to achieving our goal of 100%ing Stardew in under 2 years. Summer is here, folks, and we are not stopping to enjoy the warm weather. I'm only saying this now because at the time I was too embarrassed to admit it, but those kale seeds I bought all the way back in spring, I was under the impression that they only took 4 days to grow. So when it got to the end of spring and I went to plant them, I was thoroughly annoyed to find out that they actually take 6 days to grow. Hence why I got the greenhouse first, and hence why I'm planting them now. So now you know my dirty little secret. I just had to hope and pray that I had planted enough to get me level 6 farming to unlock quality sprinklers. Once that was finished, it was well into the afternoon, and I had nothing better to do today other than smoking the last of my catfish. So yeah, that's what I did, as you can see. But it was well worth it because I got myself bang on 18,000 gold selling them overnight. Now that I had a greenhouse full of kale, it did mean that I would have to water them over the next few days. So just assume I'm doing this every day for a little while. I'll let you know when they're ready. I spent most of today foraging for summer forage and chopping trees. I did need level 7 foraging to unlock tree fertilizer. I want to get an oak tree farm going as soon as possible. I will note that I got the Jack Be Nimble Jack Be Thick power book today too, which was a nice bonus. Over in town, I passed by Joja to grab the bus development for a cool 40 grand. My wallet was now looking very sad, but I had 2 of the most expensive developments ticked off, so I didn't mind. After purchasing some salads from Gus at the saloon, I did some fishing down in the ocean. I got the sea jelly I needed very quickly this time, and I was unsure whether to be excited or upset about it. Either way, I booked it up to the mines to try and get another cave jelly. But I left my luck at the beach, it seems. No cave jelly for me tonight. But I did get level 6 combat and level 7 foraging. When I woke up on day 31, something possessed me to make 3 recycling machines. That'll get some extra cloth and refined quartz, I guess. Now that I had access to crafting tree fertilizer, it's to no one's surprise that I quickly got some acorns planted and fertilized. They will take some time to grow, so in the meantime, I returned to the mines and fished up piles of trash. Surely one of them had to take the shape of a cave jelly, and sure enough, one of them did in the mid-afternoon. I stuck around the mines afterwards. I was farming the ice levels for coal from slaying dust sprites, and any extra iron I could get is always welcome. When I got back to the farm later that night, I made a second fish smoker with all of the jellies, and I shipped off 2 more of the aged legend roe. That, along with a couple of lava eels and super cucumbers I had smoked, got us another 16 grand. Fishing is an underrated moneymaker, people. Update on the kale. Yep, it's still growing. Not too long to go now. Anywho, I blew all of that money I had made yesterday on more coal from Clint and the minecart development from Joja. I thought it'd be a good idea to make some of that money back. How? Well, if the answer is fishing, then the question would be what has been Poxial's go-to method of money making so far and can't stop bloody doing if he tried. This time I was fishing for sturgeon. It's the most valuable fish in summer, so sturgeons it was. The only problem is you have to catch one first, so that you can put it through the bait maker. And it took a long time to catch one. So by the time I got rolling, it was already 7 PM and they'd stopped spawning. I also consciously skipped Jazz's birthday for that, which I am now greatly regretting. But hey, I had the minecarts unlocked now, so I guess that's something. Those minecarts came in handy the next morning. It meant I could get a good head start on sturgeon fishing today. Now that I had the bait ready to go, there would be no tomfoolery happening anytime soon. I fished all day right up until 7 PM, and I must say having 2 smokers is life-changing. It was well worth the time spent trying to fish up the jellies, I'm just saying. And with no more sturgeon spawning tonight, I took off down to the saloon. I made use of the fact that it was packed with villagers, and I handed out gifts to as many people as I could, without going broke, that is. In the final few hours of the day, I smelted quartz in my furnaces, and for my efforts today, I made another 16 grand. Because I was so certain that my kale was going to give me level 6 farming, I decided to spend day 34 in the mines gathering gold. For quality sprinklers, you need iron, quartz, and gold. But I was lacking heavily on the gold, so I made it today's task to gather as much of it as I could. Just for good measure, I did return to the ice levels for iron and coal later on that night, but I was putting a lot of trust into this plan. Oh hey, and I got level 8 mining. Well, today was the day to put this theory to the test. I just needed 2 level ups from this kale. Okay, there's 1, come on. And there's 2, baby, let's go! With some kale still to spare as well. I will say my relief was through the roof. I then quickly popped by the traveling cart afterwards to grab myself a rare seed. And I circled around to Pierre's to finally purchase some summer seeds. That's right, I was petty enough to wait until I had quality sprinklers on the way before I purchased my summer crop seeds. And I don't even care. All of the sturgeon money I'd gotten so far went towards another community development. That was the bridge across to the quarry. And that only left me with 1 development left to purchase. I mooched on down to Willie's after this to grab some dressed spinner bobbers. but was pleasantly surprised to see that he was also selling sturgeon bait. I purchased that without a second thought. I then chopped stumps in the secret woods and worked on a crop field for the rest of the afternoon. I did get all of the summer crop seeds planted down. I also made my first few lightning rods. Let's just hope summer provides us with a few thunderstorms. And I rounded the day off chopping trees down on the farm and planting the melon seeds that I'd picked up from the museum rewards. And just look at all those farming levels. As soon as I woke up the next morning, I got some quality sprinklers placed down. The rain did mean my crops were already watered and I was feeling very grateful. Now that the quarry was accessible to me, I spent a bit of time clearing it out for materials. The one I needed the most was coal, so it was very nice to see so many coal nodes. It was just what I needed. With the quarry now cleared, I dipped into the quarry mine for a quick excursion. That was to get my hands on the golden scythe at the end of it. Back on the surface, I was waiting for iron to smelt, so I made myself useful and I handed over a birthday gift to Gus. And I fished up a carp for our man Clint. He asked me for one in a help wanted post. Once the iron had smelted, I used it to make even more quality sprinklers, which made me very happy. I'm hoping to get at least one good starfruit harvest in this season. That would set us up nicely for the second half of the year. As the day was wrapping up, I chopped stumps down in the secret woods, handed out some gifts in the saloon, and I placed down 7 more quality sprinklers just before bedtime. It was still raining the following day, and it came with sweet, sweet lightning. My lightning rods, until this point, had been about as useful as a wood frying pan. That being said, I did have one community development project to purchase, so it was back to sturgeon smoking today. I fished all the way until 7 PM again, and I kept on smoking the remaining sturgeon when I got back to the farm later on. Between some legend roe, aged legend roe, and my smoked sturgeon, and well, a few extra fish, I made a sensational 30 grand today. And Poxial was very pleased. Poxial was also very pleased at all of the batteries his lightning rods had made. Okay, this whole third person thing is a bit weird. Anyway, over in town, I killed some time by obtaining the Alleyway Buffet Power Book. You never know what you may get from a trash can. When the museum opened, I was straight in there to donate a couple of artifacts that I had fished up. Then it was a trip to Willie's for some dressed spinner bobbers, to Clint's for some coal, and it was to the mountain lake to do some more sturgeon fishing. It's a wonderful moneymaker, okay? Don't judge me for my methods. I did have a bit of a slow start because I didn't have any spare sturgeon bait, but eventually I got into a good rhythm. Along with some aged legend roe, I got another 16k from it. And that, my friends, is nothing to scoff at. I continued to do the same on day 39. If it ain't broke, as the saying goes. And the proof is in the pudding. I'd barely done any farming so far, and I'd made more profits than I have ever before. Fishing just might be the new early game meta. And with another 17,000 gold under my belt, how could you argue with it? I was pretty happy to switch things up on day 40. Fishing is great, but too much of it, and you'll be left floundering. Get it? Because it's flounder. I got myself a second rare seed from the traveling cart this morning, and I continued left for a few meters to chop stumps in the secret woods. I have been doing this most days actually, because Ginger Island is already on the horizon with only one community development left. Now, I know I said I was switching things up today, but I have to come clean. I lied. That's right, here I am back at the mountain lake, like the floundering, lying piece of shit that I am. I will level with you all, however, because you may be wondering what in the good heavens I could be saving so much money for. Well, it's for a starfruit harvest, and you may remember that I did mention that a while ago. So that's it really. I'll skip most of the day because it is the same old. However, that night I did make use of another Friday night at the saloon. I was handing out gifts left, right and center. And when I got back to the farm later that night, I got to pick some of my first summer crops. Everything was working in my favor the next day. Not only did I have 75 grand in the bank for a round of starfruit, it was also raining and it was also thundering. I could tell that it was going to be a good day. Once I had the crop field prepped and ready for seeds, I took my first bus trip out to the desert. I ran right to Sandy's Oasis shop and purchased 164 starfruit seeds. I got those bad boys planted down as soon as I got back home, and what a relief it was to have a good starfruit harvest down. That is going to be essential to starting a snowball of farming profits, as you will soon see. But for now, I still had the rest of the day to kill, so I warped my way to the mountains and commissioned my first coop from Robin. Down in the township, I got Alex a pizza for his birthday, but he was working out in his room, and I feel like there's just a real juxtaposition there. Anywho, I caught a carp and gave it to Gus for a help wanted quest that got me my first star drop tea, something I'll use soon to get a lot of friendship points with someone. Who that is, I'm not too sure yet. I then caught a red snapper from the ocean while it was raining for the fishing collection, and I finally gave Alex his pizza. A perfect post-workout meal if you ask me. I then chopped stumps and trees in the Cindersap forest. That gave me level 8 foraging. Now that I had a good crop of starfruit down, I could finally return to regular farming activities, like picking my poppies, shipping a whole bunch of stuff for the shipping collection, checking the traveling cart, purchasing bombs. Wait, what? Now those bombs may have tipped a few of you off as to what's coming next. That's right, people, it's time for a good old-fashioned Skullcavern run. Well, that was a very successful Skullcavern run. I got a couple of rabbit's feet, perfect for gifting, lots of iridium, and level 7 combat. I had some more summer crops to pick this morning: hot peppers, summer spangles, sunflowers, and radishes too. You know, my crop field was really providing today. I hate to say it, but I went right back to fishing up sturgeon again. Unfortunately, all of my money had gone towards starfruit and bombs, so back to the grind I went. It's such a shame that the green rain decided to roll in overnight though, because like a moth to a flame, I was distracted by the sweet sounds of collecting moss and fiber. Luckily, I did have my head screwed on straight today because I still remembered to purchase the final community development, which was of course panning. It was to no one's surprise that I spent the day running around the valley collecting moss and fiber. I was thinking of having to craft the Statue of Blessings the whole time. It takes an ungodly amount of resources to craft, so I think it was going to be well worth the effort. I picked some melon and summer squash on day 45. I just thought you should know. I was on my way to Robin's when I got the penning cutscene with Willie. I skipped it, but I did get the pen. I was really just here to get a barn commissioned for the farm. Heading into town afterwards, I got the Joja warehouse completion cutscene. Now I know there was just a collective groan as I said that. Some of you did not like the fact that we went for Joja in the Sharky video, but hey, it's my playthrough, so deal with it. I paid a visit to Marnie next. I got my first 2 chickens for the farm. Then I waited a little too patiently for Sam to leave his bedroom. I promise I just wanted to give him a birthday gift and my star drop tea. With some time to spare, I decided to go fishing again. This time to catch fish for the fishing collection, okay? No sturgeon farming here. That did include the legendary crimson fish, which I caught in the late hours of the night. After a bit of faffing around on the farm the next morning, I made my way down to Willie's to fix the boat to Ginger Island. I'd been a proactive king when it came to the boat materials, which meant I could fix it all in one go. I stayed on the pier afterwards to catch a few more summer fish for the fishing collection. That included an octopus, a red mullet, a puffer fish, and a tuna. Catching these fish had taken up a good chunk of the day, but I did still have time to go and place down some pathing around my oak tree farm. The acorns and half trees around the place were starting to annoy me. That being said, I made another 19,000 gold overnight. I did smoke some super cucumbers and the crimson fish, but it all adds up. Last night I did get to see Willie and Robin working away in the dead of night to fix the boat to Ginger Island. And after a quick trip to hand Demetrius a strawberry for his birthday, I was on that boat quicker than you could say penning with Poxial. For those who are curious as to how this compares to the run Sharky and I did, we were heading to Ginger Island by day 52. And being on day 47, it's nice to know that I'm ahead of the game. But here we are in the tropics of Ginger Island already, and I think this calls for a golden walnut collecting montage. Now that is some serious progress right there. As I was nearing the end of my first day on Ginger Island, I cleared the island farm of its stumps and chopped down mahogany trees, and I pitched a tent right outside of the volcano. That is because I took off this morning quicker than a knife fight in a phone booth into the volcano dungeon. I pretty much ignored all enemies and every resource. I was dodging and weaving my way to the top as quickly as I could. Okay, well, I didn't ignore everything, but I was a little underprepared to take on everything all at once, so I did the best I could. I finally arrived at the top of the volcano later that evening. I was rewarded with a couple of walnuts and a prismatic shard, not to mention access to the forge and the caldera whenever I liked. Back down on the island, I used some walnuts to unlock the dig site. I freed Professor Snail from the horrors of the watery cave, and I got myself some more walnuts from this section of the island. And with that, I finally returned home to the valley after a very successful start to Ginger Island. I'm happy to report that I also got level 9 mining and level 7 farming. Some time away from the farm had given the crop field some time to grow some more summer crops for me, which was a nice way to start the day. To the south, I popped by Marnie's to grab a couple of cows, now that my barn was finally built. I then took a quick bus trip out to the desert. That prismatic shard I got yesterday went towards getting the galaxy sword. And back in the valley, I opened some geodes over at Clint's. I'm surprised it's taken me so long to open more, but I've been busy. I am a little upset because I only got one single new mineral to donate. But progress is progress, I guess. Into the afternoon the day went, and I found myself waiting outside the Adventurers Guild. I was here to sell off some old gear I had sitting around, and I checked in on the Monster Slayer goals. Well, I had ticked off the Grub Slayer goal, and I kinda didn't mention that. But now you know. So there you go. I redeemed myself afterwards when I opened more mystery boxes and Omni Geodes. I got a few more donations from that session. What I did for the rest of the night might seem a bit unconventional. I assembled my fishing smokers and bait maker up at the volcano caldera, and I fished and smoked lava eels all night long. As a matter of fact, I did it all of day 50 as well. Apart from when I had to make a quick trip back to the valley to give the dwarf a birthday gift, I had been planning this for a while now actually. I just hadn't mentioned it because I wanted it to be a little surprise. But instead of using dressed spinner bobbers like I usually have been, I used trap bobbers. Lava eels are not an easy fish to catch, but if you can make it work, the payoff is pretty extraordinary. For a day and a bit of fishing up and smoking lava eels, I made 117 grand. Granted, I had some aged Legend Roe in there, but that was a pittance to what I made from the lava eels. My lava eel money funded the Dwarvish Safety Manual book, a pile of bombs, and what I thought was going to be a coop upgrade the following day. However, I forgot that it was a Tuesday. Robin was nowhere to be found, so I just took off to the Skull Caverns for another deep dive. Waking up on day 52, having passed out mid-battle last night, I had brought home over 100 iridium, level 8 combat, and a bunch of other goodies from the caverns. I'd say that was a pretty productive run in my books. I spent this morning adding some more furnaces to the farm, handing Willie a birthday gift, donating a bunch of bone artifacts I extracted from the caverns yesterday, and commissioning that coop upgrade. I also handed over my hoe for a copper upgrade to Clint. With fall just around the corner, I'll need all the help I can get for the sheer amount of pumpkins that I want to plant. So a copper hoe upgrade it was. In order to afford such an outrageous number of pumpkin seeds, I did have to fall back on the old faithful ways of fishing. I fished up lava eels for another 2 days straight, but it brought in another 150,000 gold, and I think that is plenty. I got to collect my first lot of oak resin on day 54. It wasn't many, but it was a start. On top of that, I had a field of starfruit to harvest. For now, I'll be holding on to them to keg or to use as extra money in the future. Plus, it gave me a few good farming levels. Afterwards, I popped by Clint's to pick up my copper hoe, which I swapped out for a gold pickaxe upgrade. A little while later, I commissioned a barn upgrade from Robin, and I circled down to the general store to get a stack of wheat and speed grow. I planted it all back on the farm so that when the seasons change, I'll have an easier time getting it ready for my pumpkins. I like to make things easier for future Poxial. And honestly, the rest of the evening was spent chopping down trees on the farm, stumps in the secret woods, and more trees in the cinder sap forest. Until an unfortunate glitch occurred. I have no idea what's going on, but I couldn't do anything and I was walking all funny. Then I passed out. So I guess we can just move on. Everything seemed to be back to normal today, thank goodness. It was a beautiful sight seeing so many iridium bars and batteries. This morning I got myself that foraging level up that I was so close to getting last night. I've also started collecting animal produce from my cows and chickens, by the way. I just thought you'd want to know that. That afternoon I did some fishing for a tuna and a rainbow trout. However, I walked away that evening with neither. Why? I don't know, don't ask me. But I did make a start on expanding the crop field with a bunch of iridium sprinklers. What, you thought it would be that little field I had before? Hell no, my friends, I was going big for the fall season. I'm gonna be growing pumpkins on pumpkins on pumpkins on pumpkins. 'Twas the final day of summer and all of the children were asleep because I got to Clint super early and I had to wait for him to open. After picking up my gold pickaxe, I headed back home where I used it to finish clearing out debris and adding the final few iridium sprinklers. With all of this additional space for crops, I had to make sure that none of those pesky crows would want to feast on my precious pumpkins, so a few necessary scarecrows were placed down. I then took down some numbers to know exactly how many pumpkins I would need to buy, and holy sh*, there was a lot of pumpkins. I got a few more tappers placed on my oak trees later that evening. With the sheer amount of pumpkins to keg, I need to get my oak resin rolling it a little quicker. I even added 2 more rows of oak trees that I fertilized. But before I knew it, I was heading down to the moonlight jellies. With another season behind us, I was very pleased with the amount of progress we had made so far. But there is only one way to perfection, and that is forward, my friends. So let's keep this train chugging along. Unlike the first day of summer, the first day of fall was reserved purely and only for seed planting. I had a massive task today prepping the fields, which was made a bit easier with the wheat that I had planted. My copper hoe was put to the test as I went about getting the soil tilled. Once that was done, I had to go and get the pumpkin seeds, all 668 of them. I had them planted down just after the sun had set, then it was a race to water as many of the seeds before 2 AM. I made a decent effort and fell short by a few rows at the end, but that was a huge day and I was pretty content with my hard work. We've got a lot of time to kill before they grow, so I spent the morning of day 58 with some chores around the farm before heading into town. I got the special quest board cutscene, of course. The first quest for me to tackle this playthrough was the cave patrol quest, to slay 50 bats. I stuck around town for a bit longer in order to give Penny a birthday gift, and a little while later I popped into Pierre's to purchase some fall crop seeds. You know, the other ones that aren't pumpkins. They're important too. That even included some beet seeds from the Oasis shop. And naturally, I got them planted down when I got back to the valley. I ticked off one more admin-like task this afternoon, that was handing in my hoe for a steel upgrade. For the rest of the day, you could find me in the mines farming for copper. Those pumpkins are now a constant reminder that I need to craft more kegs, and for that I need to tap the rest of my oak trees, so copper collecting it was for me. With a lot of that copper smelted by the next morning, I was able to tap almost the rest of my trees, minus the one that stayed a green rain tree. But I do have more growing, so I think I'll tap that one then. I am going to need a place to store all of these kegs at some point, so it was at Robin's that I commissioned shed number 1 to be built on the farm. I also moved the greenhouse out of the way so that I had more room to grow more trees. Then it was back to copper farming in the mines. Not everything about this playthrough is going to be glamorous, and this is a good example of that. I think we should move on to day 60 then, although there's not much going on here either. I'm just waiting outside of Clint's. Eventually he did open up, his shop that is, God forbid I have to hear that man talk about Emily for 6 hours straight. With my hoe acquired, I purchased some coal and handed over my watering can for a steel upgrade this time. I then added another couple of rows of trees to the ever expanding tree farm. This did include some maple and pine trees too. It was that afternoon that I suddenly remembered about the Cave Patrol special quest, so it was hi ho, back to the mines I go to slay some bats. That being said, I was also collecting iron and slaying good amounts of slimes and dust sprites down here too. Talk about multitasking. Day 61 began down at Marnie's. With my coupon barn upgraded, I was able to purchase a duck and a goat for the farm. I then circled up to Robin's to get myself an upgrade for my shed. I went full baller mode and purchased all of the wood I would need, thinking that I was still rich, then proceeded to be severely disappointed when I didn't have enough gold or stone to make the purchase. It did take a quick trip back home and selling off of some starfruit, but I did eventually get my shed upgrade commissioned. I dug up the trilobite artifact down on the beach afterwards, so that was cool, and I thought I might as well give Elliot a birthday gift while I was there, so I did. You better believe I was back in the mines for the rest of the day. Those bats aren't going to slay themselves, and when I slay hard. Plus I got level 10 mining today. Yay! I was straight to Pierre's the next day with some starfruit in my hand. I sold off a few this morning to fatten the wallet, as it were. Over the river at Clint's, I spent some time swapping out my watering can for a gold axe upgrade. Then I processed a bunch of geodes that I'd been hoarding. I'm stoked to say that I got a lot of donations handed over after that. And I have to say that the progress being made on the museum had been exceedingly satisfactory. As much as I didn't want to, the caves were calling me to finish this bloody cave patrol quest, so that's what I did. It took all day, but I slayed bat number 50 just before midnight. And I have to admit that I've probably made some good progress on a few monster slayer goals while being down here. The dashing Mr. Gunther was at my door on day 63. It turns out all of those minerals and artifacts I had donated had won us an award. I'd be getting some of the donation money, and to top it all off, Gunther handed me the rusty key for the sewers. After some morning chores on the farm, I passed by Robin's to get a couple of stacks of wood. I used it alongside some copper, iron, and oak resin to make my first 28 kegs. Compared to the 668 pumpkins, it doesn't seem like much, but it's a good start nonetheless. The prize ticket I got for completing the Cave Patrol quest got me a new bed. Totally useless, but it's one step closer to the Friendship 101 power book. As the afternoon rolled around, I decided to add a few of the new fall fish to my fishing collection. That included a tiger trout, a salmon, the angler legendary fish, a sea cucumber, an albacore, and finally a midnight carp. As the name suggests, it was getting late, so that was the day done already. When it came to day 64, I was so wanting to kick Clint's door down yet again to collect my gold axe, but I waited patiently, like the gentleman that I am, and I collected it in a calm and collective manner. The special quest board this week gave me Linus's community cleanup quest, and my fishing yesterday had reminded me about the crab pot fish that I would need to catch for the collection. So I put down 5 crab pots in the water by the pier. I did that as I was on my way to Ginger Island. It had been a hot minute since I'd been there. You may ask, what am I doing here? Well, I was here to chop down every coconut tree in sight for the wood and foraging XP. I also cleared the dig site for the same reasons, and maybe if I'm lucky, some donatable artifacts. I also made a start on Professor Snail's island field tent. I answered some questions and donated some bones. Later on that night, I unlocked the island trader with some walnuts, and with some time still to spare, I raced back to the valley to fish up rubbish from level 100 in the mines, and I managed to tick off Linus's community cleanup quest just before I passed out. The first thing I did on day 65 was tap the remaining trees in my tree farm. That was a relief because I am still in dire need of oak resin, and maple syrup and pine tar would be nice too. Some fall crops were harvested too, and because I harvested my beets, I took a trip out to the desert to grab some more beet seeds from the Oasis shop. I did chop down trees while I was here too. Foraging XP becomes quite a grind in the final level, so any amount of XP that I could get, I will take, no questions asked. Back in the valley, I handed over some gifts to Sam and Leah because, you know, they're cool people and I desperately need more friendship points with villagers. I also donated a prehistoric scapula to the museum. As I was passing by the special quests board, I picked up another prize ticket. That got me some more quality sprinklers and a little closer to that friendship book. As the day turned to evening, I cleared my crab pots in the ocean, which added a few more fish to the fishing collection, and I waited, once again, a little too patiently for Clint to leave his shop, so that I could give him a wild plum for a help wanted quest. I'm not creepy, I'm just being productive, I promise. And finally, to finish a jam-packed day, I became a little foraging fairy and I picked blackberries until bedtime. The sight of oak resin being ready to collect was something of beauty this morning. The more I collect, the less stressed I become about having to keg all of those frickin' pumpkins. After the daily collection of my animal produce, I popped down to the beach to empty my crab pots for another day. Then it was a trip up to Robin's afterwards to drop off an emerald to Demetrius. This finished another help wanted quest, and with that prize ticket, I got an apple tree sapling. But more importantly, I was one ticket away from the friendship book. Alas, that would come in good time. Instead, I retired to the mines to farm for copper. Not being rich enough yet to just buy it from Clint, I guess I would have to get it the old-fashioned way. But I didn't stay for long. I was out of there before the afternoon was through. The reason? I guess I had enough copper to make the amount of kegs that I needed. So that was another 10 added to the keg shed. My focus was back to the fishing collection that night. I spent it in the mines catching a stonefish, a ghost fish, and an ice pip. Speaking of fishing, I began day 67 down at the beach. I had to wait to get some deluxe bait, so that gave me time to empty out my crab pots again. With my deluxe bait acquired from Willie, I paid a visit to see Jody on her special day. I gave her a diamond, and nobody tell Kent that when he gets home next year. Afterwards, you could find me close by, using the rusty key to enter the sewers for the first time. It's here where I met up with my boy Krobus for the first time. He opened up the mutant bugbear for me. I also purchased a void egg, the crystal floor crafting recipe, and my next star drop from him. It did cost me 20 grand, but that put me a little closer to perfection. Next up on the sewer agenda was to catch the 4th legendary fish. I reeled in the mutant carp just before the morning was up. Moving on, I ventured headfirst into the mutant bug lair. This is where I found the talisman for the wizard's magic ink quest, and where I fished up a slime jack for the fishing collection. I made a quick detour home to incubate that void egg I got from Krobus. Then it was back to the railroad to keep this magic ink quest going. To get past the goblin in the witch's swamp, I had to first fish up a void mayonnaise. And I will note that I added the void salmon to the fishing collection while I was here too. Once I was past the goblin, that magic ink was all mine, and for returning it to the wizard, we got access to the magic book in return. By this point in the day, you would think that we would be done. But not for me. I still had time to catch a wood skip from the secret woods and siphon some more foraging XP just before bed. Goodness me, that was a lot to achieve in one day. So it was a nice change of pace to pick some pumpkins this morning. Because of the speed grow I used on the wheat, this section of pumpkins had grown a bit quicker than the others. But it was nice splitting up the crop a wee bit. It definitely makes the process a little less chaotic. That did mean I officially had my first round of pumpkin juice going, and I was thrilled. I did have to replace that crop with more seeds, and some starfruit funded that little operation. Once it was down, I quickly popped back to Pierre's to purchase 2 speed grow and the remaining fruit tree saplings. Silly old me had forgotten to plant my rare seeds, but luckily my greenhouse was there to save my sorry butt. Plus it made for a great space to grow all of my fruit trees. My fishing collection addiction took me back out to the desert, this time to catch a sandfish and a scorpion carp. And then it brought me back to the valley to catch a gobby from the waterfalls at the bottom of the cindersap forest. The final thing to mention, picking those pumpkins today had gotten me level 10 farming. That left me with only 2 skills left to max out. In an attempt to obtain more foraging XP, I took the bus out to the desert to trade some spring seeds with the desert trader. I got some winter and fall seeds from it. However, in hindsight, it probably would have been more efficient to have just planted the spring seeds in the greenhouse anyway, rather than lose the bulk of it trading for fall and winter seeds. Well, hindsight is a wonderful thing, isn't it? Nonetheless, the seeds were planted in the greenhouse. That was the morning gone already, so I took off to the mines to get done. I farmed for copper, and I even ticked off the Dougie Monster Slayer goal while I was down there. A nice little bonus for the day. I also added a few more kegs to the keg shed later that night. Day 70 was a big day of picking a buttload of pumpkins. There were so many pumpkins that a giant pumpkin had grown. James and the giant peach? More like Poxial and the giant pumpkin. Am I right? Am I right? The natural progression of picking pumpkins is followed by planting more, so that's exactly what I did. My starfruit once again being the primary sponsor for this task, but it was much nicer this time around. The ground was already watered, so it was way less tedious. The rain did give me an opportunity to catch a walleye in the river that afternoon, which I caught that afternoon. I then cleared my crab pots once again. I was able to move them up to the mountain lake today, since I'd collected all of the ocean crab pot fish. When I got back to the farm shortly after, I was able to add another 7 kegs to the keg shed. It's filling up, slowly but surely. To round out the day, I handed Marnie some amaranth that she had requested. I chopped stumps for foraging XP, which I've been doing most nights by the way, and I chopped trees down around the mountain lake and the quarry late into the night. The last few pumpkins that I didn't quite manage to water on the first day of fall were harvested today. That definitively marks the last of the first pumpkin crop. And well, I didn't bother replacing these ones because I couldn't be bothered. Something I could be bothered with was clearing out my crab pots in the mountain lake. I'm hoping to finish the fishing collection before these 100 days are up, so any fish I can get is worth the effort. I waited around afterwards for Robin to open up shop. That was because I needed wood, and lots of it. And by lots, I mean another 3 stacks worth. What's funny is I went to the mines for a bit to collect copper after this, but I immediately decided that I can't be arsed doing that, so I sold off some starfruit and just decided to buy it from Clint, which I will say was much easier. Iron, on the other hand, was a lot more expensive, so it was fate that I would end up in the mines either way, and for me it was to collect iron. I left the mines a little early that night because I remembered that new quests were available on the board, and I chose the Island Ingredients quest. I was dealing with all things juice and kegs on day 72. I collected pumpkin juice, I popped down another 15 kegs in the shed, then I kegged another round. Day 72 also played host to the Valley Fair Festival. It was essential that I went because I needed a few things from the shop. So I gathered my Grange display items and off I went. When I arrived in town, I went straight to setting up my Grange display. As Lewis viewed all of the different stalls, I had my fingers crossed for a victory here. And look at that, first place got me 1,000 star tokens. I got the rest of the tokens I needed playing the fishing mini game. I've been burned by that spinning wheel before, and there was no way that I'd be here for the next 2 hours trying to gamble my way to what I needed. I took a much more sensible approach, and it eventually paid off. I got the rare crow, the prize ticket, and last but not least, another star drop. Rolling right along to day 73, I began today placing down another 10 kegs in the keg shed, and before taking off to Ginger Island for the day, I emptied another round of fish from my crab pots at the mountain lake, and I used my Valley Fair prize ticket to finally get the Friendship 101 power book. This was going to help getting villagers to max hearts just that little bit easier. But what was I doing back on Ginger Island, you may ask? Well, for one, I had to collect 100 ginger, which between you and me wasn't going to happen right now. I did not have enough time to complete this, but we'll just keep humoring recording Poxial for trying to get it done. I also planted some taro roots, as I will need some for shipping and cooking. Into the evening, I fished up a lionfish and a blue discus fish to add to the fishing collection. And I popped my head into the volcano dungeon, but that didn't last very long, because before I knew it, it was bedtime. I began the following day fighting tiger slimes in the rain. It was a little dramatic, I'll admit, but it did give me a level up in combat, which, as you can see, only left me with 2 more levels to obtain for my first perfection goal. It wasn't long after this that I returned to the valley, and it seems that I had brought the bad weather with me. Just as the day ticked over into the afternoon, I hunted Marnie down and found her at Harvey's clinic. I just wanted to give her a birthday gift is all. I saw to my crab pots afterwards, then I made a cheese press. I did need to make and ship cheese for the shipping collection. I also wanted to make some cheese for Robin's birthday coming up. I think she deserves it after all the hard work she's done for the farm. I continued working on shipping more items, and I made a mayonnaise machine at some point in there too. Also, I purchased the rest of the cooking recipes from Gus and the dehydrator recipe from Pierre. The rest of the night was spent waiting for some goat cheese to finish processing. It was now day 75 and I got right to it by adding a few more kegs to the keg shed. Like I said, slowly but surely, I reserved today for my first proper run through the volcano dungeon. It was time that I gave my galaxy sword the taste of magma sprites. Before I left the island the following day, I made sure to drop off a mummified bat to Professor Snail. You enjoy that one, my friend. Once I was back in the valley, I was treated to another round of pumpkin juice in my keg shed. I took this lot straight to Pierre's to sell. Profits now is better than profits later. With that juice money, I commissioned the final coop upgrade from Robin. I should also note that I have been slowly ticking off animal produce and artisan goods for the shipping collection. I then popped my head into the greenhouse where my forage was ready to pick. I won't complain about any extra foraging XP. That inspired me to get more foraging XP, so I chopped stumps for the 100th time and I chopped trees for the 1000th time. But determined is my middle name. I found and chopped as many damn trees as I damn well could. And would you believe it, I finally had level 10 foraging under my belt. That left me with one single combat level left to get. On day 77 there were more kegs to be added to the keg shed, and with that combat level fresh on my mind, I spent the day slaying monsters in the Skull Caverns. In fact, the same could be said for day 78. I did accept Robin's Resource Rush special quest before I left however, but the monsters down here were getting me some serious combat XP. I didn't quite get to level 10 combat yesterday, but I was certainly getting close. Some tasks on the farm prevented me from running straight back to the caverns this morning. Those tasks included crafting and placing more kegs and harvesting my speed grow patch of pumpkins. By the time I was finished, I met Pam at the bus and off I went for my 3rd Skull Cavern run. 3 days of slaying monsters paid off in the form of my final combat level. I was now maxed out in every skill and we can officially tick off our first perfection goal. You know, most people would have celebrated by calling it a day there, but no, not for me. No siree. I spent the rest of the day chopping trees for wood for Robin's Resource Rush. I got to celebrate the next day, however, with another round of pumpkin juice. And as you can see, I have almost filled out the first shed with kegs now. It was just my luck that Pierre's was closed and I couldn't sell my juice in the Joja Mart, so there would be no instant profits for me today. But never to mind, I took my mind off the fact by clearing out the rest of the debris on the farm. I still needed more wood for Robin's special quest, and I'm happy to report that I did in fact finish it off later that night. You could find me waiting in the rain outside of Lewis's house on the morning of day 81. No, this isn't some romantic quip, I just wanted to use my price ticket in the price ticket machine. And because my first keg shed was close to being full, I decided to get a head start on the next one, so I commissioned a second shed from Robin soon after. I then circled down to Marnie's to purchase a rabbit for my coop, and then I bust out to the desert to trade some Omni Geodes for artifact troves. It had been a while since I'd made any progress with the museum. From 13 troves opened, I got a measly 2 donations. Unbelievable. I tried to make myself feel better by crafting and equipping an iridium band, followed by a session of physical therapy, slaying monsters in the mines to vent my frustrations. I spent the following morning smelting ores. I'll give you one guess as to why. That's right, people, it's for more kegs, baby. Afterwards, I could be found outside the saloon twiddling my thumbs. I had to wait ever so patiently for it to open so that I could purchase some more salads. I then passed by Marnie's to get 2 auto grabbers for the coop and barn. I love my animals, but I could be spending that precious time doing something more productive, like running around Ginger Island for no apparent reason. Well, to be fair, I did get to pick some taro root, which I did need, and I cleared the dig site again, which did drop an artifact that I hadn't donated yet. On day 83, me final crop of pumpkins were ready, laddie. On day 83, me final crop of pumpkins were ready, laddie. It was a beautiful crop of pumpkins. So beautiful, in fact, that another giant pumpkin had grown. My hope is that all of these pumpkins I've grown will help keep the keg sheds ticking over until I can get a good crop of starfruit going on Ginger Island. I ended up removing the iridium sprinklers from the farm afterwards because of the severe lack of thunderstorms this season has meant that I'll need to use these iridium sprinklers on Ginger Island. I didn't mind though because, well, I wasn't going to be growing much in winter anyway. As the afternoon rolled around, I used my first mastery level in the mastery cave to unlock fishing mastery. An odd choice to make, you may think, but when you see what I have planned, you'll understand my reasoning. But I'm not going to tell you because that's too easy, and I'm all about video retention. Instead, I'll just tell you that I slayed monsters in the mines for the rest of the day, and I made a brief appearance at the Spirits Eve festival just before bedtime. That was to grab the rare crow and the jack-o'-lantern crafting recipe, and not to mention the golden pumpkin at the end of the maze. The day after was day 84, the final day of fall. It started on a good note, that being another round of pumpkin juice. I sold it all off to Pierre shortly after, because like I said, instant profit is the best kind of profit. I then passed by the museum to drop off that skull artifact I got yesterday, and my afternoon assignment was to clear out the island farm of all of its debris. That was so I could get those iridium sprinklers down and ready for money making potential. But that was another season down. We had ticked off one perfection goal already, and I'm excited to see what we can get done before we hit day 100. There isn't much to grow in winter, but the one thing I can grow are powder melons. I need to ship at least one for the shipping collection, so that was the first thing I did on day 85. Over in town, I scared Krobus out of a bush, and he gave me the magnifying glass. Then I said I'm sorry by giving him a birthday gift. On my way to Robin's, I picked up the Juicy Bugs Wanted quest, which could not have come at a better time, and I will explain why very soon. But for now, I commissioned an upgrade for my shed before leaving the cold weather of the valley for the tropics of Ginger Island. After clearing away the weeds, I placed down a few quality sprinklers that I had brought with me from the farm. Like I said, I'd had 0 thunderstorms in fall, so I was just making do with what I had available, okay? I returned to the valley later on to make a start on collecting all of that juicy bug meat. Quick side note, I found this huge vein of copper while I was down here. Not important to the challenge at all, but I thought it was very cool. The bug meat collecting continued into the next day as well. I just wanted to get this quest done as soon as possible. Without the burglar's ring, it was a bit of a grind, so much so that I spent all day doing this and I still came up short by the time I left in the later hours of the night. I wanted to get back to it on day 87, but I did have a couple of things to take care of, most notably crafting and placing more kegs, and giving Linus a birthday present. But once those were done, I was right back to it. Thankfully, I had done most of the hard yards yesterday, so I collected the final lot of bug meat by the end of the morning. As the day rolled into the afternoon, I popped into Robin's to purchase a bunch of crafting recipes and to commission a deluxe barn upgrade. I then trotted down to the beach to dump all 100 bug meat into Willie's smelly bin, and then I was a bit lost as to how to spend the rest of the day. So I went to the Adventurers Guild to gather some inspiration, I saw that I only had a few rock crabs left to slay for a monster slayer goal, so I made use of an infested floor on level 20 of the mines for the rest of the night. It worked because I ticked off that monster slayer goal later that night. Another round of pumpkin juice was ready for collection the following morning. It always makes for a nice start to the day. Once that was sorted, I toddled on down to the beach to trigger the bug meat cutscene with Willie. This was sequential to my master plan, because Willie gave me the crafting recipe for a quality bobber. The master plan would have to be put on hold, however, as I needed to hand my hoe over for a gold upgrade at Clint's. And I was due for another geode cracking session. It was that afternoon, however, that the stars aligned, and I could finally enact my master plan. With numerous quality bobbers and many trapper bobbers, I was able to use these 2 bobbers on my advanced iridium rod. I fished for iridium quality lava eels, and I wasn't going to stop fishing until I had over 100 of them. I didn't fish for 1 day. I didn't fish for 2 days. I didn't even fish for 3 days. I fished for 4 days straight. I fished for so long that when I stopped recording, I could literally see the lava animation floating around in my vision in real life. By the end of the 4th day, day 91, I had caught and smoked 122 iridium quality lava eels. And for my devotion to the craft of fishing, now you might be wondering, Pox, why on earth was this your master plan? Well, my friends, I will tell you. Part of my plan was to pay Morris and the Golden Parrot off to find the remaining golden walnuts. That alone cost me 620,000 gold, and I was more than happy to fish for 4 days straight rather than bumbling around later on trying to find the last few walnuts. The second part of my plan was to have enough gold left over to start a good starfruit crop on Ginger Island, but that part would have to wait for now. 4 days of fishing meant 4 days worth of neglect in the valley. So when I got back, I picked up the Wizard's Curious Substance special quest, dealt with another round of pumpkin juice, and I decided to plant and fertilize another 30 acorns. Yeah, I still need a lot of kegs, okay? I was fully expecting this Curious Substance quest to take me all week, that is usually my luck, but I got the ectoplasm from the second ghost I slayed. And you won't hear any complaining from me, except for the fact that he was unreachable that night because of the festival. Damn you, festival days! However, I did get the cutscene overnight of the parrots doing my dirty work for me, and Morris was there too, with his 620,000 gold. I didn't care though, because that ticked off another perfection goal. Not to worry though, the next morning after crafting and setting up a couple of crystallariums to replicate some jade, I handed the ectoplasm to the wizard, ticking off another special quest. A little while later, I found myself at Clint's picking up my gold hoe. That was before I took a bus ride out to the desert. I quickly dug up an artifact by the bench before casually blowing 250,000 gold on 584 starfruit seeds. I got some speed grow on the way through because surprisingly I could afford it. I decided to wait around until tomorrow to plant all of the starfruit seeds because, I wanted to give myself as much time as I could. So instead I killed some time purchasing all of the island upgrades with my golden walnuts and catching a stingray from the Pirate's Cove. Well, it's tomorrow now, so you know what that means. I'll just skip over this part, I think you get the gist. I got them all planted down before the sun had set, so that was a pretty good effort. Controversially, I didn't water them, but can you see how many there are? Could you be bothered doing all of that? I didn't think so. When I warped back to the valley that night, I popped my head into the greenhouse and found my 2 sweet gemberries had grown. One of them I shipped off, and the other I got to use to get another star drop from the Master Cannoli statue in the secret woods. Some other things I did today: I commissioned a silo for the farm, I made more kegs for the keg shed, and I did some fishing and caught the remaining winter fish for the fishing collection. This included a perch, the final legendary fish, the glacier fish, a lingcod, and a squid from the ocean. Believe it or not, that left me with only 3 fish left to catch. I rounded out the day and started the next day getting some things in order to complete my first key quest. Now, as I am saying this, I'm realizing that I totally forgot to mention that, but hey, I'm out here doing it. I had to gather 100 items of various colors for Mr. Key's Prismatic Grange quest. I should note that I also sorted another round of pumpkin juice, but let's be real, you've come to expect that by now, right? Completing the quest got me my first key gems, which I used to purchase the magic bait crafting recipe. I honestly can't say anything too worthwhile happened for the rest of the day, so I'm going to move right along to day 97. It started up at Robin's, paying off her mortgage with the acquisition of 5 stacks of wood. That was taken down to 4.5 stacks after I asked her to upgrade the farmhouse. I actually spent most of the day smelting copper in my furnaces. That was because I used it all crafting 30 tappers. That was another 30 oak trees tapped, and yet I just still had this feeling that it wasn't quite enough. It would have to do for now though, because I had other things to do on day 98, like trading jade stone for staircases at the desert trader, and purchasing some rhubarb seeds, and donating a random amphibian fossil I had on me. Not to mention it was the Harvemeister's birthday today. He got a golden pumpkin. I planted the rhubarb in the greenhouse opposite some pineapple seeds I'd planted a few days ago. Then I got a bit stuck between worlds later on. I wasn't quite too sure how to spend my time. So I quickly made the decision to start working on crafting one of each item for the rest of the night. It was slow going, but I got through most of them that didn't require anything to do with copper, iron, or gold. It was now day 99, and my little dino that I had incubated had given me his own dino egg. Without hesitation, I took that to the museum and donated it. After picking up the aquatic overpopulation quest from the special quests board, that is, I went straight to Ginger Island afterwards to pick up a new key quest. This week I got Key's Hungry Challenge. I also checked in on the perfection tracker just because I was a curious little cat, and we were currently sitting on 38%. Not too shabby for the 15th of winter year 1. While I was on the island, I grabbed the bait maker from the volcano caldera. I did plan on using that soon to help me with the aquatic overpopulation quest. I got to the night market early that evening because I was as eager as a beaver with a fever. I only had 3 fish left to catch for the fishing collection, and all 3 of them could only be caught at the bottom of the ocean. So down into the submarine I went. I caught the blobfish, I caught the spookfish, and finally I caught the midnight squid. I got my next mastery level, I got the master angler achievement, I ticked off another perfection goal. It was all happening here at the bottom of the ocean. I actually didn't quite know what to do with myself, but eventually when I came around, I picked up my combat mastery from the mastery cave and I went to bed. And yes, I woke up on day 100. You'd be sorely mistaken if you thought we would have time to spend today in a spa relaxing. Not during this challenge, my friends. I had pumpkin juice to collect, I had another shed commissioned for the farm, I placed down 16 more kegs, and I stood in the cold winter weather catching perch for Demetrius's special quest. However, I will take this time to say I hope you enjoyed part 1 of this challenge. I did have to split this into 2 parts because honestly it was just too much to try and fit it all into one big video. The progress we'd made in these first 100 days is unlike anything that I have ever achieved before. And honestly, I think I'm already way ahead of where Sharky and I were at this point. So I'm feeling pretty good for the next 100 days after this. Anyway, I got the quest done and I said goodbye to the legend in my fish pond. Instead, I swapped it out for a sturgeon. And that was everything there was to day 100. So that's it, folks. That is the first 100 days of this challenge done and dusted. We managed to achieve so much already, and remember that this is only part 1. I for one really can't wait to see how much longer it'll take me to reach perfection, and the ultimate question is, can I beat the previous record I made with Sharky? Who knows? But there is only one way to find out, and that is by liking the video and subscribing to the channel so you don't miss out. That being said, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you being here. And with that, there's not much else to say except you're all wonderful people, so have a wonderful day. And thanks for watching.